Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Release!
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott is back. Hi, Scott.
I'm here. Sean, it's been a minute.
It has. We took a bit of a hiatus. It was not really planned. As I said in the spring, one of my favorite times of year to do the show is the summertime because we can do stuff that we can't really do when games are going on in the season. But man, it was a hectic summer. We just couldn't find time, Scott.
Yeah, we got busy. You know, there was family stuff and all sorts of trips and events and the heat. My God, the heat. And, you know, now we're back.
Yeah.
Eager to talk about curling. I was thinking, Sean, you want to hang out our curling team next week?
We probably should. We said we were going to
Yeah.
hang out at some point this summer, but as usually happens with curling teams, nobody actually pulls the trigger on it. But we probably should.
Yeah, and I saw Jesse once. I got he won at the year-end Bonspiel. He won a video doorbell.
Yeah.
And he didn't want it. So I went over and picked it up from him, saw him then. But I was thinking, maybe next week we can do something. So this is our test. If our teammates listen to the podcast, they can call me if you hear this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Scott, there's an event that we could all go to Monday night, a 5 cassettes for the release of Coup de Patin. It's finally out. So that's a thing that's going on. It's at the Francophone Association. So everyone has to speak French. It's in the market here in Ottawa.
Le Marché by. Excellent.
Yeah. So there you go. That's a book I co-wrote. Came out, the English version in 2017. We have it translated. It's finally out at long last. That is out and available if you want to read in French. If you want to read in English, it's called Lace Up. It's about skating, the history of skating in Canada. So there you go, Scott. I'll throw that out as a location for our team gathering.
I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah, so there you go. So we'll see if we can get together. Games are happening both at the recreational level and at the pro level. We have had a couple of spiels. The Next Gen Under 25 event took place that also included a mixed doubles event for the qualification to the World Junior. What is it? The Youth Olympics, or was it the University? No, I think it was the Youth Olympics that the team from Newfoundland qualified for. A really cool picture of when they won that to get in. There's been a couple of events going on here in Ontario. There was an event in Sherwood Park. I think there was one in Saskatchewan in terms of the TV type teams playing in that. So some events going on. I really feel though, Scott, if we turn back to that U25 Next Gen, really good idea, but let's not have important games or games that are really important to teams in terms of potential next level funding, opportunities. Maybe let's not have them in August. Maybe.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I was not. I don't think I was here in Canada for it, but also like I'm not interested in watching curling in August. But who knows? You know, I do watch a lot of baseball, so if there was some curling on TV, probably I'd switch it at in between the innings. You know,
right? Yeah. So congratulations to all those teams, Scott. We missed a lot of news over the course of the summer, and nothing really earth shattering in the world of curling, or at least Canadian curling. But of the stories that did come out, I mean, I think we've already talked about the new Olympic qualification process here in Canada, a couple minor lineup changes potentially after the last time we recorded. But Scott, what would you say is the biggest piece of news that we have not discussed during our hiatus?
It would probably be Darren Moulding leaving in my mind, just because of where it puts that team that Team Horgan, they made the playoffs last year at the Brier and were sort of up and coming, still are up and coming, right? But that veteran voice tended, in my mind, gave them a bit of a leg up with Tanner just being able to focus on throwing those 4 stones. So to me, that's a big deal in the sense that the top 3 teams in Canada on the men's side are probably very clearly Gushu, Botcher, and Dunstone in whatever order you decide. And then the fight for 4th place is what's next on that. So I thought that Team Horgan would be like positioned to be in that conversation for this quad. Maybe they still will be, but I think that's the biggest story. Rachel Homan having another baby, so maybe she plays well after having a baby, and so watch out, world. Here comes Rachel Homan supercharged again.
All right, so in full disclosure, my internet crapped out, so if there was a hard edit there, that's why there was a hard edit there. But yes, Scott, Rachel Homan, and husband Sean did welcome their 3rd son to the family, so congratulations to them. That means that we get some Heather Nedowin on our TVs, and just for fun, they went out and won the first event of the season with Heather Nedowin playing Skip. We will never say no to a Heather Nedowin TV game. Yeah, so those lineup changes are probably the biggest news that we haven't talked about so far on the show. Another piece of news, Scott, that we don't know what it is yet as we record this on Thursday night, but the Brier has a new title sponsor. We just don't know who it is. Curling Canada in their teaser used the word smoky to tease it, and I don't really know exactly what that means. I kind of hope it's like a whiskey, like a nice smoked whiskey sort of thing. I joked on what we formerly called Twitter that it'd be great if it means it was sponsored by a magician.
Ooh, like a little David Blaine illusionist. Yeah.
Yeah. Nevin mentioned that he replied, he said, "Oh, the David Blaine Brier." And his trick could be that he's under the ice the whole time. Remember when he did that in Times Square, whatever, it was in the box, he could just be under the ice the whole time. So by the time most people are listening to this, you will know who the title sponsor is. We, as yet, do not. Scott, do you have any guesses on what smoky could possibly mean?
Sean, all I can think is Montana's Smokehouse and Grill. All you can eat ribs sponsoring the event. I can picture us going there, and underneath where the media goes, there's always donuts and coffee. I think this time it's going to be ribs everywhere, just ribs.
Yeah.
Oh, delicious. Okay. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. I wondered if it could be the Salmon Fishers Association of BC, and it's just smoked salmon all the time. Like,
yeah, that would be also good. Also good. A lot of smoked salmon.
Yeah. So we will see, as we say, by the time most people are listening to this, we will know who the title sponsor of the Brier is. Also, Curling Canada did release a announcement today of a new under 15 event called U25 Rock Fest. This is a series of events that's going to take place over 3 days with various forms of competitions. There's going to be singles, triples, development clinics, some off-ice activities, and of course the Golden Rock Fest. So a lot of cool stuff going on here. Steve Laycock is a U15 coach, a 10-time Brier competitor. He is involved in this, and these are going to be done regionally. So you have the West, which is Alberta, British Columbia, Yukon, Northwest Territories, the prairies of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and then you have Central Ontario, Quebec, and then the East Coast. There are some dates already listed for the spring, but if you have anybody in your family who is under the age of 15 who might want to participate in this, does sound like some fun events. So be sure to check those out.
Yeah, check them out. There's info on the Curling Canada website right now.
Yeah, and we've talked about how we want Curling Canada to invest in the grassroots level. This is a good way to do it. Good start.
Yeah, good start.
Scott, we will turn our attention now to this upcoming season, something that we like to do every year is look at team schedules and how various squads are putting together their falls into January. Because really that's when the choice of scheduling changes for most of the teams, because you go into your provincial playdowns. And I will say, we're talking in the Canadian context here. Teams go into their provincial playdowns if they're playing in them, then Scotties, Brier, and then if they qualify, of course, for the Worlds, and then the two slams after that. So where they have leeway tends to be in the fall, in the first week or so of January. And this year, in looking at the schedules, we wanted to see what, if any, impact the new Brier and Scotties qualification process had. So if you haven't heard or don't remember, moving forward, 3 teams will be the wild cards at the Brier and the Scotties. That's going to be the same structurally, 3 wild cards, but instead of being decided after the provincial playdowns, they are going to be decided prior to the season starting based on points from the previous season. So the top 3 teams in CTRS points who didn't win the Scotties or the Brier the year before will get the 3 wildcard spots off the top of the season, with the idea being that those teams don't have to chase points over the course of the season. They can focus more on building towards those events in the hope that one of the 4, if you include the national champions, will win the event and therefore be better prepared for the Worlds. I think this is the ultimate theory from Curling Canada. This year, slightly different in that they've only picked 2 because it's a new system. So they're going to let teams qualify off of this year's points. So heading into the season, it is Brendan Botcher and Matt Dunstone on the men's side. Jennifer Jones, Rachel Homan on the women's side are your qualifiers, along with the defending champions Brad Gushu and Carrie Anderson, respectively. So we wanted to see what impact this would have. So we've looked at the schedules for the 2 defending champions, 2 teams that haven't qualified, but you would expect to see at the Brier and Scotties, and 2 young up-and-coming teams, to see how they have set their schedules for the fall through the early winter. And Scott, on first blush, I think this new rule has a bit of an impact.
Yeah, I think it's starting to accomplish what Curling Canada wants, which I think we all kind of identified as it being, we want one of the top 5 teams in our country to win the national championship.
Yeah.
Right? That they don't want a Michelle Englot coming out of nowhere to win the national. I mean, they'll take it if the story is good, right?
Yep.
A team PEI from a few years ago with Kathy O'Rourke coming out of nowhere seemingly to make it to the final. But the ideal is that they want the best teams in the country to be best positioned to win these events. And they feel that by having them not have to focus on qualifying for the events, they'll be able to focus on preparing for the events. We'll see if that, if the truth plays out, if the correlation is there. But yeah, in looking at the schedules of different teams, the teams that have already qualified can basically play in the events that will help them tune up for the nationals. They don't have to worry about scheduling around provincial championships. The teams that are likely to get there through their province, or maybe that 3rd wildcard spot, they still have to chase points a little bit to be eligible for that 3rd spot, but they're really building towards the provincial championships. And then the other teams that are, I would say, less likely to win their province are really, really just pushing for points.
Yeah.
So and like you said, Sean, next year, the qualifiers will be based on this year's points.
Yeah.
So even if you're not chasing points this year, you still want to get enough such that you be in position for an automatic berth next season.
Yeah. So that's, I think, one of the things that's kind of unsaid here is that if you're not chasing points this season, or teams who are chasing points this season could potentially get those spots for next year. So could this be somehow self-defeating in a way that next year it'll be teams who are purely chasing points this season who get those automatic spots. I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. But certainly when you look at the younger teams who we're going to look at here, they're chasing points. They're out playing a lot. Now, part of that too is the reality of when you're younger, if you have good sponsors and you have the opportunities and life allows it, and when you're younger, in general, you might have a little more flexibility lifestyle wise. You can go out and play a lot more, and it's part of the development process. So there is that part of it as well. Not pure point chasing, but a lot of it is point chasing. So
the reality is too that the events that you can qualify for don't earn you as many points.
Yeah, that's true.
At that level. So you do need to play more events to be able to accrue the same number of points as a team playing in, say, exclusively Grand Slam events.
Yes, and that is very true. And if you're only playing in the Grand Slam events, you got to have some results in order to keep those spots moving forward. And certainly that's the expectation of the top team. So let's start with our defending champions, and let's start on the women's side with Team Einarson. Scott, they have already played one event as we sit here and discuss. They played in the Saville Shootout this past weekend. That is the event that Rachel Homan won. But otherwise, Scott, they are not planning, according to their team published schedule, on playing a non-television, non-arena event for the rest of the season. So they're going to play in the Points Bet in Oakville in a couple weeks, and then all the slams. So they got the Challenge, the National, the Masters, the Canadian Open, the Scotties in February. Then, of course, if they qualify, the Women's World Curling Championship as well. And then, of course, the Players and the Champions Cup in the spring. Now, they have not posted the Pan Continental Curling Championship on their schedule. They are the representative of Canada for that event, so we can add that on there. But Scott, that is another arena televised event that's taking place at the end of October into the early part of November out in Kelowna. So when you look at Team Einarson overall, you have the one Spiel event and then 5 other events, so 6 in total, 5 of which are on TV, or excuse me, 6 TV events when you include the Pan Continental, leading into those Scotties Tournament of Hearts.
Yeah, and this is the sort of right that this team has earned, right? They have won 3 Scotties in a row, 4 Scotties in a row now.
It's hard to count.
Because 2021, who knows? But they're really good at curling. So, yeah, they don't need to prove anything. They've got funding guaranteed for this year and probably for next year, to be honest. But they can sit back, take advantage of the televised events, make money that way, but through their sponsors and through the prize money. Excuse me, and just basically this is sort of the litmus test case for, is this going to be a better way to prepare for the Scotties than has been their route in previous years. Already they didn't play as many events as some other teams, but they would play more events in the fall than this. So we'll see. And also it's an important year for the quad, but it's not the most important year for the quad. And Brienne just had a baby. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind taking like a little breather, if you can call like only playing in televised championship level events a breather. Right. But they've earned the right to do so, and the schedule bears it out.
Yeah, it's interesting too to think there, Scott, that when you think back to their first season together in the fall of 2018, I think it was, that by Thanksgiving, it seemed like they had won 6 events, and that's kind of how they're playing this year. So it is a significant change for this team. But as you said, they had earned it. One of the things I'm always curious about with the defending champs is what are they going to do from the time between that last slam and the national championships. A little different, Scotties to Brier, because it's a 2-week difference between the start times. So the Scotties being first, of course, This team has decided not to put anything on the schedule. So when we look at Gushu, you could see that they've decided to do things a little differently in the new year, but that's certainly their right. And if they feel like getting prepped at home, practicing is the way to go, it's really hard to challenge them on that because, as you said, they've won 4 straight. And who knows, maybe they would call up Tabitha Peterson or somebody and say, hey, like, come on up, let's have some games and play, and or not, or whatever. So they do have some options available to them.
For sure. And you're right. It's only like probably 3 weeks from the end of the Grand Slam to the start of the Scotties. So it's not like it's a huge gap.
Yeah. So yeah, the last Grand Slam, the championship Sunday, is the 21st of January, and the Scotties kicks off on February the 16th. So just, a little over about 3.5 weeks there.
Yeah.
So, Scott, let's shift over to the men's champion, Team Gushu. They have not started their season as yet, but very similar schedule to Team Anderson with a couple of exceptions. So they are going to play in the Shorty Jenkins Classic, which is back. It was gone for a year or two. It is back now in Cornwall, Ontario, somewhat local for us here in Ottawa. Then they're going to play in the Points Bet down in Oakville. Then the Tour Challenge. They do have the Pan Continental Championship on their schedule, the National. Then they're going to Japan in early December for the Karuizawa International before coming back for the Masters. And the other event that kind of stands out on their schedule is the Aztec Safety Challenge. You'll see that event on some other schedules as well. So that seems like a bigger club spiel. It's taking place at a curling club as opposed to arena, but a lot of teams are going to be there out in Lloydminster from January the 10th to the 14th, which leads right in to the Canadian Open that kicks off on January the 16th in Red Deer. So not a long distance to go. So it seems like the folks out there in Lloydminster have done a good job of getting teams in to kind of kick off the rust from the holiday break before that Canadian Open. And then, of course, the Brier the first week of March. So, Scott, a couple more events than Team Anderson here, a little more than what we saw them play last year, where they took a lot of time off at the start of the season, really eased their way into it. But like Kerry Anderson, Brad Gushu has kind of earned the right to set his own schedule. But I will say I'm a little surprised. This is more than I expected from them.
Yeah, it's a little more than I expected too. Just given that I want the age of of the team, being of that age too. But the Kurosawa International, I feel like this is a bit of a prestigious one, and they like to play it. I believe they've played in it before.
Yeah, they've been to Japan before. Yeah, for that event.
Yeah, so a sort of a bigger profile one for curling in Japan. So for them to be able to go and sort of represent themselves to another curling base, another pretty good curling country there, it makes a lot of sense for them and their sponsors. Mm-hmm. Then the Aztec Safety Challenge, this is a new Bonspiel, and Team Botcher is the presenting team for this. So it's like a Botcher organized kind of spiel, and it is, like you say, geared towards those teams that are coming to Red Deer for the Canadian Open anyway.
Right.
So let's do a spiel beforehand in a curling club where they can bring the best teams in the world and just do sort of like a mini Grand Slam.
Sure. Yeah. And why not, right? Like, you can set it up, you can do it, go for it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so like those two are the ones that sort of stick out, but otherwise, pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah. So overall, they're playing in 9 events before the Brier. So a couple more than Team Anderson, but you can see, again, volume wise, not onerous by any means. Not too much travel outside of the event in Japan, and they're used to having to go to Central and Western Canada. So not
Mhm.
not too bad there for those guys.
Now, notice, Sean, we talked about the gap between the Open and the national championships, and for this one,
Mhm.
finishes January 21st. March 1st is the start of the Brier
Yeah.
this year, so it's quite a long
Yeah.
layoff. We'll see if that affects them in any way. I don't think it will, but a bit longer than you'd expect
Yeah, maybe Greg Smith will be getting a call for some games out
for
there
some
at the
games.
Ballyhaley, some stuff. Or of course, Gushu's daughter is playing at a national level now, so she can give him some games. Like he doesn't even need to
Yeah,
call outside the
no
house to get
slouch.
some good games, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, no slouch there for sure.
All right, so let's move on now to two teams that we would expect to see at the Scotties and Brier, respectively, but do not have their spots booked. Let's start again on the women's side, and let's talk about Caitlin Laws and her team. This, of course, is a very good team in a loaded province. So, Scott, when we look at the Team Laws schedule, it's not super busy, but a couple more events than what Carrie Anderson has chosen to play in. So they played in that Savile shootout this past weekend. Nothing on the docket until the points bet in a couple weeks. And then they have the 3 Grand Slam events. After the points bet, then they have the Players Open in Dundas, Ontario. So they're sticking around here in Southern Ontario. Then they have the Tour Challenge to the National, the 2 Grand Slam events. In December, they've added the Red Deer Curling Classic and the Western Showdown out in Swift Current, the former being in the latter part of November, and the Western Showdown in Swift Current in December from the 7th to the 10th. That leads into the Masters, the other Grand Slam events, from the 12th to the 17th of December. Then they're off until the Canadian Open. And of course, this team has to qualify through the Manitoba Provincials, which this year are going to be in lovely Morden, Manitoba from January 23rd to the 28th. So, Scott, you can see that they have their eyes on those same Grand Slam events, but they have added, if I count this right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 club type events, 4 cash spiels on their circuit, whereas Carrie Anderson only had 1.
Yeah, so this seems to me, Sean, like more of what we're used to seeing from these teams in past years, right? Stacking the deck with events early in the season to make money,
Mhm.
to get points to qualify for future events, especially for more Grand Slam of curling events. This team is good enough. I don't think that they'll need to rely on those points to get into the Grand Slam events. They should do well enough in those events themselves to be able to keep going. But it is this is sort of what you expect of a team that doesn't have an automatic berth in nationals.
Yep.
So they're gearing everything towards the fall, with then your break over the holidays, come out with the Grand Slam in Red Deer, and then roll that into provincials the next week.
Yeah. So if you look at, so let's say they qualify out of the Manitoba Provincials, they will have played in 10 events. Carrie Anderson will have played in 6. So that's going to be somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 games, depending on how deep they go in some of those events. That's a pretty significant difference in terms of the wear and tear on the body and just sort of where you are. Now, some could argue that that's a good thing, that you're more sort of tuned in, but at the same time, it's a long season. It can really wear on you. So this is where I think this difference will be interesting to see. And 1 year isn't going to be enough, but over time, if this trend continues where the defending champions do pull back a little more, it'll just be something to keep an eye on. Another thing to watch at the national championships.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing is that this team is relatively new playing
Yep.
together, right? And they only played half the season together last year, and then it wasn't even
I think it was
half the
less,
season
because then Selena was off, right?
yeah, Caitlin was away at the beginning, and then Selena was off at the end. So yeah, it makes sense to me that they would schedule more events in the fall to continue to build that team dynamic and see how it goes.
Yes. So very exciting to see this team's schedule. Another team that I think a lot of folks have their eyes on over on the men's side because of a big addition to the lineup, that of course being Brad Jacobs. It is Team Carruthers. So they released their schedule and they've already played an event. They played in the Stu Sells Oakville Tankard this past weekend. Then they are going to play in that Shorty Jenkins right before the PointsBet International, going Oakville, Cornwall, Oakville for their first 3 events. Then they have the Grand Slam in Niagara Falls in the middle of October. They are playing in the Sioux Curlers Fall Classic in Sault Ste. Marie. I think that one might have been a contractual obligation for Brad Jacobs, saying, "Hey, everyone, you got to come to me for this one." So kind of an easy sell on that one for Jacobs, at least. And then, of course, the National. And then one that we see very frequently, Scott, the New Floors Penticton Curling Classic, the end of November into early December. A lot of teams historically have played in that event. Carruthers is going back to it this year. Then the Masters rounds out their 2023 schedule. In January, they are going to play in that Aztec Safety Challenge out in Lloydminster, as you mentioned, hosted by Team Botcher, before the Canadian Open there in Red Deer, and then the Viterra Championship, the Manitoba Men's Provincials, is in Stonewall, Manitoba in early February. So, Scott, I counted 10 events pre-provincials for this team. So if they get into the Brier, they will have played 11 events. So you're probably looking in the range of somewhere, again, depending on results, 50 to 70 games. Probably on the higher side because they're so good.
Yeah, probably in that range. And this is like a lot, like 5 events before the end of October.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit early, and it makes a lot of sense given that they have to integrate a new team member. No matter how good that team member is, it's always good to just play more when you have a new teammate. And we'll see what happens. The Penticton Curling Classic, you're right, this is like a mini Grand Slam almost at this point. We won't see Gushu there because they're going to be in Japan that week, but a pretty stacked field for sure for that event. So this is like similar to what we said with Team Laws. This is a team that wants to get more games under their belt to play together. They want to earn more points to be able to re-qualify for Grand Slams, and they want to put themselves in position for next year's points berths into the Brier.
Yeah, but that's a lot of games to be doing.
It's a lot of games, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the travel isn't terrible for them, but it is, that can take its toll on your body and mental well-being as well. So Ontario, now everything is in Ontario through the end of October, but Ontario is a pretty big province, so getting around isn't.
They're going to get their miles going up and down the 401.
That's right. Yeah.
From Oakville to Cornwall, back to Oakville.
Yep.
Yeah.
Down to Niagara Falls too, and then hey, maybe they'll do a road trip back up to the Sioux.
Why not, eh?
Why not, eh?
Get in.
Yeah.
Get in.
So we've seen the added additions for those teams, those 2 teams kind of in that middle, looking to get those berths who you'd expect to see at the national championships. Now, Scott, let's talk about 2 up-and-coming teams. One that we have seen the members of the team not necessarily together at the national championship, and one we have seen at provincial championships a couple times, not quite yet at a Brier. But let's start on the women's side with Team Skrillex. They, of course, qualified last year out of Alberta. A crazy shot by Kayla Skrillex in those provincial championships. Big change to the lineup this year. So it's not the same Team Skrillex, but they are looking to get that spot back in the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. They are loaded up, Scott, as we talk right now. They've already played in 2 events, the Alberta Tour kickoff at the end of August, that Saville shootout out there in Edmonton. Their next event is going to be that PointsBet at the end of September. Then they have the Curlers Corner Autumn Gold Classic out in Calgary, another classic event that a lot of teams have played in. The Tour Challenge is next for them, and they will play in that independent of if it's tier 1 or tier 2. They have a spot in that event. I think it will just depend on where they are in the rankings for which level it is. Then they're going to play at the end of October the Saville Grand Prix out in Edmonton, presumably also at the Saville. Then the Okotoks Curling Classic in mid-November before the Red Deer Curling Classic the following weekend. First weekend of December, they're going to be in Morris, Manitoba for the DeKalb Super Spiel. That's another regular feature on a lot of teams' schedule. Then the following week, the Curling Stadium Western Curling Showdown of Curling in Swift Current. Then the Masters, pending qualification. Then they have the Canadian Open in January before the Alberta Scotties. So if, Scott, they are able to qualify for the Masters and the Canadian Open, they will be playing in 12 events prior to those Alberta Scotties. And of course, if they make it into the national championship, they will have played in 13 events.
Yeah, so this is obviously the most events of any team that we've talked about so far. And it makes sense, right? A younger team looking to get experience and points and play against other top level teams. And if you want to do that when you don't have auto bids into Grand Slam level events, you just have to play in a lot of spiels.
Yeah.
For them, that's what they're doing. They're doing what it takes. You need to have good sponsors for this. You need to be able to win some money at these spiels to help back up the investment that you're putting into your team and your game. But it's the right way to go, in my opinion. What do you think, Sean?
I like it. My concern is time off potentially, but I think they've actually structured it really well in that they're essentially playing 2 weekends in a row and then taking a week off. So for the most part, there's some exceptions to that, but it seems like they actually have a pretty good balance in terms of the time off and when they want to schedule their stuff. So I think this can work for them. And again, they're very young and have more energy than either of us. So I think they'll be all right.
I think so. Yeah. I think this will be good for them. But what about the men's team that's doing the same thing?
Yes. So I should say too that Team Skrillex did win the opening event there in Leduc. So off to a good start for them. But over on the men's side, let's talk about Aaron Slaczynski and his team. They are also loaded up here for the 2023-2024 season. They played in the opening event in Leduc, as did Team Skrillex. They also played in that Saville shootout this past weekend. Coming up this weekend, they're playing in the ACS Major out in Beaumont, Alberta, the Okotoks Classic. They are coming to Ontario for the points bet. So between now and the points bet, they have 2 events that they're playing in. Following the points bet, not taking really any time off, they're going back to Alberta to play in the McKee Homes Fall Classic out there in Airdrie before the Tour Challenge. Like Team Skrillex, they'll have a spot, just a question of tier 1 or tier 2. Then they're taking a couple weeks off before the original 16 men's spiel in Calgary. The following week at the Red Deer Curling Classic, they are set to play in that New Floors Curling Classic out in Penticton. Like Team Skrillex, they're also going to play in that Western Showdown in Swift Current in December. They have not put the slams on their schedule, but presumably they could qualify for the one there in December, but they don't have it on their schedule. They are going to participate in the Aztec Safety Challenge. So between the Western Showdown in December, taking some time off for the holiday break, that Aztec Safety Challenge, and then if they qualify for the slam, they'll play in it, of course. But they are currently scheduled to go down to Tempe, Arizona for the Golden Wrench Classic. That used to be a Team Carruthers staple that they are not playing in this year. But a popular event. Schuster usually goes and plays in that. Some of the American teams, I think Dropkin's been at it past couple of years. So that's a popular one because, well, it's Tempe, Arizona in January, and these people live in Alberta, or in the case of Schuster, Minnesota. So why not go to Arizona in
Go where it's hot.
January? So that is their schedule, Scott. Before the Boston Pizza Cup in January, they will play in 13 events, potentially more if they get the points and get their rankings up to play in the Spiels, or excuse me, in the Slams.
That's pretty incredible, right? And we'll remember last year that it was, who was the wild card 3 last year? They qualified based on points earned at the Golden Wrench.
Yeah, Karsten Sturme had a good result at the Golden Wrench, which I think they played in almost last minute. I thought I read that story that they figured, oh, we're close enough, maybe we should go play in that to kind of put us over the top, and they had a nice result, got the points, got into the
Brier. And edged out John Epping's team for points for that third wildcard spot. So an important event in remembering curling history, and remembering Ed Wernick, what a great player he was. But he's not dead, right?
I have to check that.
Oh boy. I don't think so. But anyway, this is like rookies hustling, kind of like, listen, we're a good team. We know we're a good team. We just need to play in the events and earn the points to be able to show it on a bigger stage. And that this team is really good, Sean, this Lichinsky team. If they were in another province, they would be a multiple time Brier participant, if they were from PEI or maybe New Brunswick, something like that, they'd be in it. But this is them saying, you know what, this is our time. We're going to go for it. And good on them for doing it.
Yeah, more power to them. I do like these guys. That I remember a couple of years ago, they were saying that they should have been the Alberta rep at the 2021 Brier because they had the most points on the Alberta circuit, and Botcher and Cooey were going to get wildcard spots anyway, so might as well give it to us, which I like that. I don't think I agree with that perspective, but I like it. I like the argument. So these guys are up and coming. We should see them at the national level pretty soon, but 13 events before provincials, that is a lot. Like, if you look at, and maybe more too, right? If they have success early in the season, they will get spots in the slams potentially. Like if they win, say the Tour Challenge Tier 2, have a couple other good results, maybe go deep at the points bet, the Canadian Open is not out of the question.
Yeah, which would be pretty incredible. Like, I don't even remember a team playing that many events. Like, since we've been doing the podcast and we've been talking about schedules like that, I don't really remember. Maybe it's possible, but it's pretty wild.
If they have good runs at some of these events, you could be looking at 100 games.
And that's something we see sometimes from the international teams that travel around because they don't have the competition close to home, that are just like, they're going to a bunch of different countries and trying to play in every event. But 100 games is a lot before you get to nationals. Like,
so you can just, Carrie Anderson's playing in 6 before the Scotties, and Skrilik, if she plays in the Scotties, will have played in 13, right? Slichinsky, if he gets to the Brier, will have played in 14 events. Gushu 9, right? So very different strategies here for these teams, and very interesting to see how it'll play out over the course of the season and what happens in subsequent years. Do we see this trend continue where the younger teams are going to go heavy to get those points, where the teams in the middle are going to be a little more active, and the teams that have really established themselves are going to focus on the main events in order to prioritize the national championships? We'll have to see, and how it goes. This is the first year of this new system, but and certainly this is anecdotal. This doesn't represent all the teams, but an interesting trend that I saw when I was looking at the schedules.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's very interesting to see what effect this year's schedules will have on next year's automatic berths into those Scotties and Brier. So something we'll be keeping track of as the year goes on.
Absolutely. So that'll do it, I think, for this week. We are back in the swing of things. I don't want to promise weekly episodes. That is the goal. But as we discovered over the summer, it wasn't always possible. So we will endeavor to do our best with weekly stuff over the course of the curling season. Our staples will still be there once we get into the new year, Scotties, Brier stuff, Worlds. Like we'll be around for that. We'll talk about the slams when they come up. And I'm hoping that we can find time to do some non on the ice talk as well. Some of the other things that we like to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about this summer. We do have some stuff coming up that's kind of outside that realm that we're working on right now. So hopefully the goal is weekly. Not going to promise it, but that is the goal. But sometimes things get in the way. So we'll try our best.
And Sean, I mean, it's really because you go to an office now and we can't record at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. When we get home, we finish work in our home offices and just can flip right into this. So I blame you is what what I'm saying.
Fair enough. That's totally fair. So if you want to see what we come up with over the course of the season, do subscribe wherever you get your podcast, likes, rates, comments, all that good stuff helps other people find the show, keeps us growing. Head on over to GameStonesPod.com. Past episodes there. You can click on the merch. You got the hats, the toques, hoodies, all that good stuff is there. And we would encourage you, if you're interested in any of it, to go ahead and purchase something. I'm going to go in and get a new hoodie for this curling season. So I'm excited to look at the new options because we changed the supplier since the last one I bought. So I'm excited to get in there.
Sean, I think there's new colors too.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. I'm thinking blue, but I want to look at the colors. Maybe red. I don't know.
Ooh, a red one.
So we'll see.
I'm going to go to the site right now and check it out.
All right. So head on over there to GameStonesPod.com. And you can, of course, follow along with all the fun and frivolity. We are Game of Stones Pod, Twitter, Instagram, and Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. And if you want to reach out, let us know what you want to hear, questions, anything like that, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. Scott, you are on the site now. What are you seeing?
Okay, I'm going to premium hoodie. That's right, premium.
Yeah.
Colors: black, navy, maroon, charcoal heather, and carbon gray.
Okay.
Ooh, maroon. That sounds good.
Yeah, but if you believe what Billy Porter taught us in Kinky Boots, maroon is not where it's at.
Maroon is not where it's at.
No, he has a whole song that is based off of the fact that they show him maroon boots and how he cannot be part of this plan.
Not good.
Yeah. But maybe I'll buy a maroon one because I have the other colors.
We do have mustard t-shirts now.
Ooh.
Burnt orange.
Okay. Well, I should get an orange one.
Athletic heather.
Okay.
Blue, red. Anyway, they look good.
Wow.
Go check them out.
So I guess athletic heather is different from the nerd heather.
Yeah, that's right. Well, black heather is like a dark heather.
Yeah.
And then athletic heather is gray heather, like a light gray.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, the differences are minor but major at the same time. So I will go. I will check that stuff out. Scott, since we last talked, the baseball season is in the stretch run. I'll give you 20 seconds to yell about the Blue Jays.
Score some runs. They said, "Oh, Sean, we're focusing more on run prevention now instead of run creation." Well, you know what? Run creation is way more fun to watch than run prevention. Anyway, that's it.
All right. Well, there's 2 weeks left in that season, so we will all follow along, see what happens, and we'll see what happens as the curling season gets into gear as we are back at it. So thanks for listening so much, everybody. We'll be back with you again, hopefully next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.